Hello and welcome back to Defender Resolves First, an unmatched podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Elliott, also known as John, and we've got with me my evergreen co-host, Mr. Big Mike, Sidious256. What's going on, Big Mike?
Oh, we're just hanging out here. We've recently talked about the Unmatched Adventures, and now we're going to be going on to something kind of similar, aren't we, John?
Yeah, so last week you got to hear from Dirtle Games about the development and pitching process of Unmatched Adventures. And now with us here today is the Discord's illustrious Gary M., who's going to talk to us about something pretty adjacent to Unmatched Adventures to kick us off. Gary, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Living the dream.
Yeah, we are. We're living every dream to the fullest, if you ask me. Uh, Out here, we got the playtesting guilds that we know. Gary's very much into the fan deck stuff. We all know how well you do in that category, Gary. We know how much you deal with all the fun stuff and rules, and we know that you are very much part of the support of the community, if you will. That's why he gets the red tag, folks. He's a support of the community. So that's why we have him on today. All right, Gary. So why don't we ask, how did you even get into all this fun stuff with the playtesting guild?
So I started making fan decks pretty early on when I found the community, and then of course the contest happened. I don't actually recall if the playtesting guild started before or after the contest. I don't really recall. But the original playtesting guild was put together and run by Fanaka66, who's he comes in and out on the server, but he is a moderator on one of the external communities. Um,
He's the Captain
Yes.
America guy.
He's also the one who
Yeah.
did JoJo the Boxing Kangaroo. That was his submission for the guild.
Yeah.
Um, a really cool deck. But yeah, Fanaka actually created the guild originally and ran it himself for the first couple of iterations, and then he brought me in to kind of help uh, time management wise on that. And then I kind of slid into the role of taking over management from him because he had some other priorities that he had to take care of in his life. But he's back in the fold now. And we also have the Knight 618 on board with us. He's pretty active in the community, and one of the things we're really excited for is he actually has a background in psychology. So he's actually been providing a lot of insight on how to best sort of manage the gamification of the guild itself to help motivate people to stay with it, how to make sure that people's expectations are being met, and just kind of make sure that as we're building that community, we're building something that's sustainable and rewarding for the people that are involved with it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of great. And I've met the knight personally, and I think he's a wonderful person. I hope to see him more so, and maybe we'll see him at a couple cons, and maybe he can help me out psychologically wise, because ya boy needs it. Ya boy needs it.
You hate to see it.
Why don't we just get into some meat and potatoes? What did the Fandec playtest guild, if you will, whatever you want to name it, call it, slap a name on it? What did it used to be?
So, what it used to be was kind of an open forum where we take submissions and kind of track them in a sheet for people. And what we do is we would elect one to get started with, and then people could earn points by participating in playtesting that deck, providing feedback to the creator, just generally helping them hone that deck in and improve its design. There wasn't really much of a goal there other than helping people make their designs a little bit better. So what we would do there is people would accrue points, and then once that deck was considered done, we would take a look at who had the most points, and if they were ready to submit a deck, then they could spend all their points because they were in the lead and more or less propose one of their decks to enter next. And that would run for I think we were doing about a month at a time there. We tried doing some overlap eventually, trying to get a little bit more uh, out there for people to try out, because what we were seeing is a little bit of drop off over time where people wouldn't be as invested in one design or another design, so they would kind of fall out of the habit of participating. You wind up with these big droughts where every once in a while you'd get a deck that a lot of people weren't interested in, and then you'd have these big spikes where you'd have one that people were interested in. Big driver for us was having other John, Zero Skater, do those videos for us. But as he got more and more involved with doing competitive stuff like that, it just wasn't available in the time schedule anymore. So we totally understood that, but it was kind of a hit for newer participants that they weren't getting that exposure and that wasn't driving people to come check out their decks. So we have some changes planned for that that will hopefully address some of those issues.
Yeah, I did one of those videos with John back in the day. I did Negan, and he Bruce Lee combo chained Negan to death in on like 3 moves. It was disaster for me. This is still up on his YouTube, I think. He likes to rub it in my face that he got to do that to me. Those that was fun. I did the playtesting guild way back in the day. I submitted Vincenzo Casano for my wife. She's like really into K dramas, so I was like, this deck doesn't really need to be like good or bad, but it does need to be playable. So I like,
Yeah.
because it was just going to be her playing it. It's not going to be competitive. So I submitted it to the playtesting guild and got a lot of good feedback. So um, it's been missed. So like you're bringing it back, right? This is it. Playtesting guild episode 2, Revenge of the Playtesting Guild. Like what's happening?
Yeah. Yeah, the actual official name of it that I keep telling people to use is Return of the
Yeah,
Playtesting Guild.
There
perfect.
you go.
Like a terrible B movie sequel. It was either going to be Return of Playtesting Guild or Son of
Oh,
Playtesting Guild.
Son of is. I mean, it's classic. We are doing like those '50s movies retro throwback with UMA this summer, so Son of works for
Right?
me.
Son of Kong, son
Yeah,
of the playtesting guild. And yeah, kind of going back a little, I think what I saw was, and I really don't, I'm not blaming John for the Zero Skater, but it seemed like it started to fizzle out, right? Like he kind of stopped doing it, it kind of stopped getting, and then it just kind of like trickled out over time, and then it kind of walloped into nothingness in a sense. Um, but I'm really excited to hear that it's coming back. I'm really excited to see what may be in the future for it.
I mean, I'll on the record blame John. Why not?
Yeah, he's not here to
Fuck that
defend
guy.
himself.
Like it is John's fault. You know what? Blame Zero Skater 12. John, if you're listening to this, it's all your fault, dude.
John, you killed the
That's right.
playtesting guild.
You were the first bullet in the chest,
Oh,
John.
You put the first bullet and then you put the shovel in the ground to bury it.
the Son of the Playtesting Guild movie cold open is Son of the Playtesting Guild devouring John in brutal revenge for the murder of his father.
Just him like with like a fist in the air, like I will get you, John, by the
Yeah,
end of this.
absolutely. And the son is played by none other than Huberus.
Oh, of course, of course, of
Absolutely.
course.
How,
No
how
one
else?
else should fit that.
How else could you do that movie? So okay, so it's coming back. It's official. What's
Yes.
it gonna look like?
So do you want to know what the contest version is going to look like or the full version?
So okay. So by the time this is airing, so everybody listening now, the contest will have already have gotten all the submissions in, right? So why don't you talk about that? What's the contest?
Sure. So what we're doing is kind of riding on that hype train for free for Unmatched Adventures. One of the requests that a lot of people had on Kickstarter and on the other media accounts was, "Hey, why aren't the villains playable? We want the villains to be playable. Why can't I play as Mothman? Why would you do this to me? Why?"
Yeah,
So early on, I kind of reached out to Restoration. I'm like, so would you guys be opposed to me running an unofficial contest where we have the community design these decks and kind of find like community acceptable voted decks for these that would be officially unofficial? So the goal here is to kind of appease people, and I know some people aren't going to be happy with it because it's not official unless it's stamped on
right.
Restoration
Yeah, of
Games,
course.
like letterhead. But this is as close as it's gonna get, guys. I mean, I've got buy-in from them saying that they're cool with it, and
Right.
even though they are not the ones sponsoring this contest, they are interested in seeing the results of it.
So you're
So
having everybody submit playable decks for Mothman and the alien, the Martians. Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So we're taking Mothman submissions and Martian Invader submissions, and we're taking as many as we can get. And while they should be playable in the sense of being heroes that you can play normal, competitive, unmatched for, They do not need to be playable in the sense of not being absolute jank. Like these decks can be atrocious. They just need to have an idea and a gimmick, and they need to have some theme behind them that makes them feel like you're still playing the villains.
So when this is airing, which is, you'll have already selected by this point, right? Like some front runners. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a panel of community members, and we are going to basically churn through all those submissions and figure out our way internally that we want to group them out and evaluate them. We're going to be looking at stuff like, how well did they communicate the themes and mechanics from the villain deck and translate that into being a hero. So obviously there's some things that work one way for unmatched adventures that aren't going to work in competitive, but we'd still like to have those heroes feel like the villains that they're based on. So what we're going to do is we're going to work through those entries and narrow those down to 3 Mothman submissions and 3 Martian Invader submissions. And all 6 of those decks will go public on the server, and the community will engage in the first run of the new playtesting guild format through those decks.
So what's that look like then?
So the new format for running that playtesting guild is that we are going to always maintain a buffet of decks from people to choose from. In this case, for the contest, it's going to be 3 Mothman decks and 3 Martian Invader decks. Um, Over the course of the weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to give the community time to play them, give feedback, time for the creators to work with the panel to evaluate that feedback and improve their decks. And then every 2 weeks, we're going to take a community poll and we will retire 1 Mothman and 1 Martian Invader. So after 4 weeks there, we will have our finalists, our final Mothman and our final Martian Invader. Now, those could change substantially from what their initial submissions were. They might even incorporate some elements of the retired decks into them. So it's entirely possible that we see 3 Mothman decks kind of merge down into one, because the goal of this, for the contestants, of course, is like, the pride of having your deck get selected and being part of that process. But for the community, the goal is to just get the coolest playable version of these guys out there that we can, and then the guild will host those files on their Unmatched Maker account in perpetuity, and they will be the first decks that are endorsed with a community endorsed tag, meaning that from the community's perspective, these are heavily tested, and while they're not restoration products and they won't be allowed in official competitive tournaments, they are just as good as any printed fighter to print out and play at home or play in your own fan
Hmm.
tournaments.
Are you going to have a numeric threshold in terms of like how many tests have to be done, or do you not want to set such like a in stone uh, guideline?
So what we're going to do is at the end of the first week, we're going to take a look at the decks, and if one of them seems to be really lagging behind the others in terms of amount of plays it's getting, we're going to see what we can do to address that, whether that's us giving it additional plays internally, or just trying to hype that deck up a little bit more. We're going to try to keep them roughly even. Hopefully we get enough buy-in that it's not much of an issue. If it really comes down to it and it seems like it's lagging, we'll probably lean on the panel to assist a little bit more in getting those tests in. Or ultimately, we could opt to possibly extend those 2 weeks a little bit longer in each case to make sure that people are getting the opportunity to play them. We understand that, like, not everybody's going to have a big open week, so we tried to set it up there so that everybody would have a couple of weekends to at least give them a shot, or maybe a couple of nights during their week to take a look at them and have some fun. And I mean, from a contribution standpoint, it doesn't even have to be playtests. It can just be like taking a look at them and saying, hey, I noticed this pattern with them. How's that pattern play out? Does it have a negative gameplay loop? Does that pattern feel fun for the opponent? A lot of the same things that Restoration looks for when they're testing their decks. So the process that we will be doing will be strikingly similar to what they do behind the scenes.
Terrific. You love
I
to
feel
see
like
it.
that's how it should be too, right? Like we should be to get something that's like kind of slapped on there saying, "Hey, the community, name driven. You can probably print this out and play it." If we don't mirror what they do, how could we ever get anything that's anywhere near that? So, I mean, I think you guys are knocking it out of the park with the whole thing, and I'm excited to see what comes out of that.
Yeah, so the end goal of that, which is a pretty good segue, we are going to not only be kind of polishing up those final designs. I will be contributing some work and working with a couple other people that I know are Photoshop savants, and we are going to be taking the Unmatched Adventures art and kind of adapting it to be able to fill out these decks with what is effectively official art from Unmatched Adventures. And then we will host the print and play content on Unmatched Maker in the form of a link, so that in perpetuity, in addition to being able to play the decks digitally, you'll have the option to print them and cut them out at home, or you will have the option to basically take those files and go to GameCrafter or make playing cards and have them at least semi-professionally printed yourself.
That's pretty snazzy.
That's pretty neat, if you ask me.
Yeah. And as a thank you to our contestants, what we're going to be doing is the finalist, Mothman, and Martian Invader, the ones that make it to the end, they will each be mailed for free a copy of both decks. And everyone else who participated in the playtesting guild portion, the other four front runners, if you will, each of them will have their choice of Mothman or Martian Invader to be mailed to them.
Yo, that's pretty tight. That's
There
pretty
you
dope.
go. That's a great prize support, if you ask me.
So this is the big event that's bringing the playtesting guild back. But what is your vision for the guild post the Be the Villain contest?
So my grand megalomaniacal vision for the playtesting guild, after the contest is over, is we will maintain these 6 deck slots, and what we will do is we will offer an even spread of new fan decks for players to try out. What that means is there's going to be 6 slots. 2 of them will always be public domain. 2 of them will always be IP, intellectual property, licensed. And then the last 2 will be wildcard slots that can go either way. If we have enough interest, we could increase that beyond 6 slots, but for right now, we felt that 6 was a good starting point. And as opposed to the old playtesting guild where there was only one option, you can play and test whatever you want out of those 6 at your leisure. And over time, the people participating in it will be assisting the creator and kind of honing their deck in, making refinements to it. And when we kind of have consensus there that that deck has gotten all that it can get out of the guild, we will mark it as graduated. It will leave its slot open, and then we will take a new deck in place from participant points.
So, with the IPs, do you think that is there any like broad spectrum of we shouldn't go past this line? Is it anything, obviously not something we've done, or that's coming out that we know of that's released, but what do you think is going on there with those 2 slots and possible wild card?
Right. So what I'll say as far as licensed content is we'll do basically what we've done on Unmatched Maker before. Like we don't really police licenses on that. The one thing we will be cautious of course, is like if you're using licensed art, like if you're stripping like Marvel Comics art out of comics and using it, um, if we ever get something, we have to take the deck down. Fortunately, we haven't had anything happen like that yet, so we're just going to keep rolling with things that we've been doing, and hopefully that won't be an issue. As far as content, um, I mean, I'm not going to tell people if they're developing a deck that Restoration is developing.
Right.
I can't do that, but
Just like a quick, just
hopefully we won't have that kind
a
of
quick
overlap.
shortcut for the community. They're just like, well, I'm just gonna make IP decks of everything, and if I
Yeah,
get it right, we'll know.
yeah, right. Now, hopefully we don't run into that because I'd hate to see somebody do a bunch of work and then like 6 months later have Restoration release the official version. But I mean that's kind of unavoidable on some
Yeah,
fronts.
no
Um,
doubt. How are you selecting like which 6 decks are getting chosen?
so So what we're going to do initially is we are going to pull the old points pool from participation from the previous playtesting guild because those people honestly did put in a lot of work and effort, and then things kind of just fizzled out from under them. So we are going to be taking what is likely to be, and I can't guarantee this because we might have some other considerations to take in there, but likely we will take the top 6 point holders and or possibly the last 2 people to contribute decks that really didn't get to benefit from the guild previously, and we will basically ask them if they would like to resubmit a deck. Um, Anybody who passes on that will basically continue down the list, and then we'll open it up for people to basically send us submissions. And if we don't have like a clear delineation of who should be getting the slot, we'll pick one at random from the submissions.
So, okay. So so recently in the Discord you kind of added a channel. It's like a forum, the fan deck forum basically. And is that like all part of your vision for how this will work and run?
Yeah, so I added that new channel in there. It is Discord's new forum style channel. So what's nice about that is it's kind of like a traditional forum. It's kind of like Reddit. We get those really clean delineated threads, and you can have like a good comment history back and forth in there. The creator who makes it can update periodically and like refresh those links. And the great thing is it's sitting inside a Discord, so you get alerts. We don't have to be doing this out on Reddit. And the win-win of that is by saying that we're going to run this through the Discord now, we're driving people to the Discord to make sure that they're getting announcements and rules updates and spoilers and treats from restoration games. So it kind of feels like from a community benefit perspective, it was a no-brainer for us to move to doing this in Discord. And that new forum style post, some people have already started utilizing it, but it's great to have people basically be able to post their deck link on Unmatched Maker in there and then just get 37 comments that they're able to parse through and like take that feedback and have a conversation without having 60 other people in the channel stepping on that conversation trying to talk about other
Yeah, one
stuff.
thing I remember about the playtesting guild is that by hosting it on Reddit, it was like super divorced from the community in a sense, especially because like when you post something on the Discord, you get a lot of feedback. It just gets buried, like you're talking about, with like 4 or 5 conversations happening on top of each other. And then when you had it on Reddit, you just didn't get as much people finding their way over there. So this is great. I think that it's gonna really, really help engagement.
And that's what we want, right? Like we want people to be able to come out and say, "Hey, there's this what I think would be non-traditional way of being involved in the community." I think the traditional way of being involved in the community is talking about future sets, how we think characters will line up into each other, possible tournaments works, and all that, and just the things that are what I would say more popular, if you will, than fan decks. And I'm not trying to put that like fan decks down by saying that. I just think that in a traditional sense, it's not nearly as popular as other things. But if we can get it there and make it something that we all can get around, then hey, it might be more popular than the tournament aspect. I think we've seen things like that where, in my personal opinion, the team league, which should be going on while we're doing this, or just ending, or maybe, whatever the case may be when this is released, is far more popular than the actual summer and winter tournaments. And I think I can say that a little safely because of how many people actually came out and joined very quickly and how people were so thrilled to hear about it and are back into that. Where I think most people would, on surface, assume no, the main tournaments are all that matter. So I think that that's what we could do. Make the playtest guild much much higher than what we think it is, or what I should say is seen on face cover.
Yeah, I mean, I it's so funny that you mentioned that because like I'll hop in the Fandex channel every once in a while. There are people in there who talk a lot who I don't know because the community is so much bigger than you think, and the podcast is guilty of this too, which is quite part of the reason why we're having this episode and kind of shining a light and giving a platform to talk about this stuff. But there's like a whole community within the community in Fandex. I mean, it's such a big part of what Unmatched is and what the draw is that you can create your own characters and have them play. So I'm really excited about the son of the playtesting guild.
The son of the playtesting guild. Here he comes.
Yeah.
We killed him. It's the return of the playtesting
All
guild.
right.
We killed the son. Return to the playtesting
The
guild.
sun is dead. Return.
Son is dead. John got his way yet again. We'll get you one day, John. We'll get you one day.
Yeah. Well, now you just have to have John do a video of the return of the playtesting guild.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we could
Yeah.
ever find time, that would be actually kind of like full circle.
Listen, I'm just gonna not guilt him, but I'm just gonna like showman shit, like one up him, be like, hey, we did a whole podcast episode about it, so no, I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Jeez, John, can you spare me a 15-minute video to get this off the ground, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you listening,
No.
John?
We did reach out to some other streamers and media creators in the community, and a couple of them are interested in doing pieces on it. And to help further and support that, and maybe help get some other people into that space, in particular for playtesting, if they're not already doing that, for set reviews or design notes or tournaments. We are going to be offering additional point earnings and participation for people that kind of drive that hype train.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, and I could say we haven't had our playtesting guild content creator in a sense, right? Like we really haven't had that person who goes out of their way. I mean, we could say John did at one point, right? Like we can
Yeah.
obviously say that. I think that's when content was, and this is again no shot at anything. I think that's when content was at a minimum almost.
It's pretty scattershot.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then maybe we can find that person. Like maybe I when I think of people who make like deck reviews and stuff, I think of Taylor, Chad, John. Just off the top of my head, this is no shot at anybody who I didn't mention. When I think of things like funny content, I think of I don't know if you guys saw Zach's new video, but that was absolutely hilarious. The one where they played the monitor without the T Rex
Oh,
and Sattler with the monitor off.
Oh
That was
yeah.
yeah.
absolutely hilarious. Or the maneuver men.
Yo, I love that guy.
He is
I
hilarious.
love that guy.
Footer do gooder or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yo,
Oh
that
my god,
that
that guy
video
is
he
just.
made, the video
There's
he made,
so many.
unmatched characters I'd like to get high with. I watched that in the airport and just laughed for 5 straight minutes when he said Houdini, when he's talking about Houdini, he's like, Houdini's the type of guy, he's gonna convince you to get into cryptocurrency. I almost dropped my phone. I thought that was so
Yeah, he's got some
like
great
I thought
one-liners
that
too.
was
That just
so good.
everything's out of left field too.
That was
Like
so good.
everything's out of left field. It's just
I
like
know.
random. So we need that. We need that, folks listening. We need somebody to be the content creator for Fandex and make it what it's meant to be.
Yo, Darkblade, like I bet he would be into this too, because he like hosted a couple of streams of the hack slash repeat last year.
Hmm.
So
Oh, maybe Darkblade, if you're listening, maybe we put the pause on Full Send Friday and do the Fandeck Friday.
yo,
Just
Fandeck
saying.
Friday, that'd be dope.
Fandeck
Ooh.
Friday works. I'm just saying.
So like beyond like content creators, Gary, what can the community do to contribute or help drive the success of the return of the Playtest Guild?
So yeah, basically what we'll be doing is we'll be asking people to participate the way they always have been. We'll be looking for them to engage with those threads in that forum style channel for Fandex, and we'll be looking for people to give feedback on decks. That'll score you participation. Play testing the decks will score you more participation. And then we're still going to continue that trend of allowing creators to call out exceptional contributors to score them a little bit of additional perks there. And as we already said, anybody who wants to contribute streams or YouTube media to kind of get some more exposure to those decks. Additionally, people who take the time to help those decks that have been out there a little bit longer than the others, like if we have ones that aren't getting as many plays because this isn't going to be a thing where they're locked in sequence. We could have decks that rotate out quickly and others that rotate out very, very slowly. The slower those decks rotate, the more points they become worth to contribute to help them
Oh, that's
graduate.
clever.
Yeah. Hey, Little side question here, Gary. Are you gonna be
Mm.
creating decks for the wonderful guild?
Possibly at some point. I mean, I have a lot of decks out there that are untested that I'd probably want to hone in a little bit,
Yeah,
but
like I remember we're
assuming my work schedule gets better.
yeah, I know, and work does get in the way of a lot of things. You don't have to tell me that, but I think it was that at PAX the one time Suze asked like how many decks have you created, and
Yes.
that was
Wait,
hilarious
what was the
when.
answer? What's the answer? How many have you
What?
made?
Hold on! Don't tell him!
Uh,
Don't
I,
tell him! Don't
I,
tell him! Guess how many decks he's created. Let's start there.
Man,
Guess how many decks.
you're making me want to guess really high because you're saying that. So I'm gonna go like 136.
Okay, 136. Now I'm going to give a
oh,
slight pause for 2 seconds to the listeners out here. Say a number out in the abyss of what you think it may be, and your guess is done. I hope you have it locked in. Gary, why don't you give the official answer, my friend?
so it's a soft answer because I don't know how many of these are actually published out there. So my count of decks that I can see on my private account right now is 275. Now, some of those might be unpublished, and one of them is my progressive patch file that I do, but I would say probably north of 240 decks published at this point.
There you
What?
go, John. Yeah, see, exactly. Dude,
Yeah, that was Susan's
Susan's exact
reaction.
reaction was very similar, and so was mine. I was like, what? Like,
Where do you what? What?
My best run was what was it? It was like a year and a half ago. I started doing decks for the Metal Gear Solid series, and I did like 45 decks in 2 months.
I've done like 3 decks, and each one took me a gazillion years, and they all came out terrible. So,
same.
I didn't say they were good. I said they were out there.
so we like that meme. You know that meme like you spent 3 weeks designing a shit tier fan deck. I spent 2 weeks designing 240 playable decks. We are not the same.
Yeah, we are not the same.
like,
That's what I was gonna say.
It's funny because there are people out there that they're either probably past me at this point or they're not far behind me. Like I know Hubaris has like 115, 116 published right now, and Dreamcarver has like
oh,
65 or
Dreamcarver is
something
like
published.
real legit
Very
about
active in
this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that.
he's like
Yeah, very
super
active.
into it. Yeah.
yeah, and those are just the ones off the top of my head. I know there's a couple of guys that I don't think their Discord name is the same as their Unmatchmaker name, but I know there are probably close to a dozen people out there that have broken the
Well,
30 or 40
I
deck
know
mark.
Hubaris makes a lot, and he does a lot of play testing with his decks too
Yes.
to refine them. I mean, just look at what he and Darren did with Hack Slash Repeat,
Hmm.
which we're big fans of on the podcast.
We are big fans of.
We got an exclusive about that last week, so that was cool. Man, Gary, what else can you tell us about fan decks before we let you go this evening? Is there anything else you'd like to contribute?
Sure. Let's just give a general shout out there. Don't be afraid to submit your janky decks. There's no reason to feel like, oh man, this isn't good enough to be in the guild because we will put absolute trash into the guild. The whole point of the guild is to make it better. So I really do encourage people that if you have an idea, even if it's a thing where it's like, man, I only have 15 cards for this deck, fill out the other 15 cards with skirmish and momentous shift and dash and put it in the guild because we can figure out the rest of
Let
those
me ask you
cards.
this: is there going to be sort of a limit on how many people can like put up there? So, for instance, like John comes up and he says, "Hey, I have my one character Vincenzo. I want you guys to kind of relook at and let's
Mhm.
do this." But then I come up and I've made like 2 or 3 decks that are kind of IP, and I'm like, "Hey, I got these 3. Would you? Was that is that like theoretically acceptable? Is that not acceptable? I don't want to set people on the wrong guideline here. You know what I mean? And they are janky, the 3 that I have, but I know there's like 1 or 2 that I'd be like, I really want to work with this.
Yeah, so what we would do is we would like take John's in, and then as far as yours, we would ask you to propose which of the three you want in first, and then we put the others on the wait list.
Perfect.
And then basically you guys reset points at that point because you now have a deck
Yes,
in.
perfect.
And now, while the big difference here from the old playtesting guild is once you had a deck in, that was it, man. Your points were dead for the next month. But while you guys have a deck in, you can be contributing to other stuff. You could be contributing to the other 5 decks that are out there and scoring more points. So, I mean, there is a possibility there that Mike puts a deck in, and if it's slow going, Mike might score enough points that when a slot opens back up again, he can put up a second deck.
There
Oh,
you
okay,
go.
that's good to know. Yeah. Are we scoring points right now, having this conversation and publishing a podcast about the guild?
You technically
Yeah,
are,
that's a
yes.
media point. We're up, boys.
Yeah,
We're winning, boys.
it's
We're
media
winning. We
points.
got media points.
We out
We
here.
got the head start.
We out here.
We
Defender
out
Resolve's
here.
first exclusive with the first media points for the playtesting
Watch
guild.
out, fellas. The first bad duck's coming from me.
Watch out! Oh man, I love it. Cool. Well, Gary, I really want to thank you for joining us tonight and talking about all this stuff. And I'm hopeful. You know, we get a lot of feedback on the podcast, which I'm always overwhelmed and surprised by that so many people listen to us. So thanks again to everyone listening. But I think that this will be good getting this out there, and I hope that it increases some engagement because like when you did this last time, it was really cool, and it just sounds like it's going to be better.
Yeah, I'd love to have you, Gary. I'm glad that we went over all this. I hope everybody keeps trying to keep fighting for the playtest guild. I hope that we hope to see a lot more engagement. I know we might not be the greatest voice for the Discord, but hopefully your listening ears can translate into throwing the fan deck back into where it rightfully should be, and that's higher than what it is currently.
Yeah, I mean, just like one note to say about the Fandex is um, last week we listened to two guys tell us about how their Fandex and fan system became a published game through restoration. So, you know, it's I think it's something worth engaging in.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely worth engaging in. Anything's possible if you believe, and we saw that with Turtle Games.
That's right.
So, uh, with that, Gary, is there anything else you got going on? Anything else you want to say?
I just kind of want to give a shout out and thank everybody for participating the last time, and hopefully we see all of you come back this time.
All right.
You'll love to see it. Well, what do they say, Mike?
The defender resolves first.
You'll love to see it.